sometimes she's not uninterested, she's emotionally guarded because life taught her that showing feelings too quickly can lead to pain. A lot of men mistake silence, distance, or slow replies as rejection, but real female psychology is often deeper than that. People who've been hurt before protect their hearts quietly. Stoicism teaches that instead of chasing validation, a man should stay calm, patient, and emotionally strong enough to understand that attraction grows through trust, consistency, and emotional safety, not pressure. The biggest mistake in relationships is becoming emotionally attached to attention instead of reality. When a man constantly overthinks every text, every look, and every moment, he slowly loses his self-worth trying to win someone's love. Heartbreak usually begins long before the breakup. It starts when someone forgets their own value while trying to be enough for another person. Stoicism reminds us that love should add peace to your life, not destroy your confidence or identity. Real connection happens when two emotionally mature people stop playing games and start being honest about their feelings, fears, and intentions. Many relationships fail because both people are scared of vulnerability, so they hide behind mixed signals and emotional walls. But love becomes powerful when you stop forcing affection and start focusing on becoming emotionally balanced, disciplined, and secure within yourself. The moment you stop begging for love is often the moment you finally attract genuine respect and deeper attachment. He sat there staring at his phone again, reading the same message for the 10th time, trying to understand what he did wrong. Her replies had become shorter. The warmth in her voice had faded. The girl who once stayed awake talking to him until 2 a.m. now took hours to answer with one dry sentence. And like most people do when they're emotionally attached, he immediately blamed himself. Maybe he wasn't attractive enough. Maybe he talked too much. Maybe he cared too deeply. His mind became a battlefield of overthinking, and every small change in her behavior felt like proof that he was slowly losing her. What hurt the most was that she never actually said she hated him. She never said, "Leave me alone." She just became distant little by little, and that kind of pain is confusing because you keep hoping things will go back to how they were. That's the dangerous part about emotional attachment. It keeps you emotionally connected to memories while reality quietly changes in front of your eyes. But what he didn't understand at the time was that sometimes a woman's distance has nothing to do with your worth. Sometimes she's fighting battles inside herself that she doesn't know how to explain. Sometimes life has taught her that opening up emotionally leads to disappointment, betrayal, or abandonment. People who've been hurt deeply don't always express their pain loudly. Some become quiet. Some pull away. Some see your patience without even realizing it. She had once told him about the people who left her when she needed them most. About the promises that sounded real until they suddenly disappeared. About how she learned to stop expecting too much from anyone because disappointment always came in the end. He listened, but he didn't truly understand how deeply those experiences shaped her. Trauma changes the way people love. It changes the way they trust. It makes them hesitate even when they genuinely care. The problem was that he thought love meant constant reassurance. He believed that if someone liked you, they should always show it clearly, every single day. But human emotions are rarely that simple. Some people love cautiously because they're terrified of getting attached again. Some people need time before they feel safe enough to fully open their hearts. And when you're emotionally attached, patience feels impossible because your fear of losing them becomes stronger than your ability to understand them. He started chasing harder, sending longer messages, asking if she was okay every few hours, trying to fix the distance between them. But the more desperate he became, the more pressure she felt. And pressure can destroy something that might have naturally grown with time. Love cannot breathe where fear controls everything. One night, after another cold conversation, he finally stopped texting. Not to play games, not to punish her. He was simply exhausted. Exhausted from trying to earn affection that used to come naturally. Exhausted from constantly questioning his value because of someone else's emotional inconsistency. For the first time in months, he sat alone with his thoughts instead of running after reassurance. That silence changed him. He realized how much of himself he had abandoned while trying to hold on to someone else. His happiness depended on her attention. His confidence depended on her replies. His mood depended on whether she sounded loving that day or distant. and slowly he understood something painful but important. Attachment without self-respect becomes emotional suffering. So he began rebuilding himself quietly. He spent more time with his family, started focusing on work again, went on late-night walks without checking his phone every few minutes. He learned how to sit with loneliness instead of panicking because of it. And strangely, the more he focused on becoming emotionally stable within himself, the calmer his heart became. Months later, she reached out again. This time, the conversation felt different. There was honesty in her voice. She admitted she had been emotionally overwhelmed and afraid of getting close because she didn't want to be hurt again. But what shocked her most was that he no longer sounded desperate. He cared, but he wasn't emotionally drowning anymore. He had finally learned the difference between loving someone and losing yourself trying to keep them. That's what Stoicism quietly teaches about relationships. You cannot force someone to be emotionally ready. You cannot beg another person to heal faster, love deeper, or communicate perfectly. And no matter how much you care about someone, your self-worth cannot survive if it depends entirely on their attention. Real love is patient, but it is also balanced. It understands another person's pain without abandoning itself in the process. Because the strongest people in relationships are not the ones who chase endlessly for validation. They are the ones who can love deeply while still remaining emotionally grounded within themselves. And sometimes the moment you stop begging to be chosen is the exact moment you finally remember your own value. He used to check his phone the second he woke up. Before brushing his teeth, before getting out of bed, before even fully opening his eyes, he would look for her name. Sometimes there was a message waiting for him, and those were the good mornings that felt light and beautiful. But on the days there was nothing, his entire mood changed. One empty notification screen had the power to ruin his peace for hours. That's the dangerous thing about emotional attachment. You slowly hand someone else control over your happiness without even noticing it. At first, their connection felt innocent. Late-night calls, random laughter, deep conversations about childhood pain and future dreams. She made him feel understood in ways nobody else ever had. He wasn't just attracted to her beauty, he became addicted to the emotional comfort she gave him. Every compliment from her felt like medicine for insecurities he had carried for years. Every bit of attention made him feel important. And because he had spent so much of his life feeling emotionally unseen, her presence became more than love to him. It became validation. That's why he ignored the small signs in the beginning, the inconsistency, the moments when she disappeared emotionally for days, the times she seemed loving 1 month, inute and distant the next. Whenever his friends told him he deserved better, he defended her immediately because emotionally attached people don't see reality clearly. They see potential. They hold on to memories. They convince themselves that if they love harder, communicate better, or stay patient longer, things will return to how they once felt. But relationships built on emotional dependency slowly become exhausting. He started overthinking everything. If her reply sounded dry, he assumed she was losing feelings. If she took too long to answer, his mind created painful stories that destroyed his peace. He would stare at his screen wondering if she was talking to someone else, if he had become boring, or if he simply wasn't enough anymore. And the sad part was that she probably never realized how deeply he was emotionally drowning inside. The more afraid he became of losing her, the more he lost himself. He stopped enjoying his own life. He canceled plans just to wait for her call. LS. He became emotionally available every second of the day, hoping she would finally give him the consistency he desperately needed. But love should never feel like emotional survival. Real love should not force you to constantly question your worth. One night, after hours of waiting for a response, he saw her active online while still ignoring his message. Something inside him broke quietly, not because of that one moment alone, but because months of emotional exhaustion finally caught up to him. He sat there staring at the screen, feeling embarrassed by how much power one person had over his emotions. He realized he wasn't in love with peace anymore. He was attached to uncertainty, attached to hope, attached to the occasional moments of affection that kept him emotionally addicted. Heartbreak changes people in strange ways. Some become cold, some become angry, But he became honest with himself for the first time. He finally admitted that he had abandoned his self-worth trying to keep someone emotionally close. He had confused emotional intensity with genuine connection. He thought suffering for love proved loyalty, but in reality, he was slowly destroying his confidence trying to earn consistency from someone who wasn't capable of giving it. The hardest part wasn't losing her. The hardest part was facing the emptiness inside himself after she became distant. Because when someone becomes your source of validation, their absence forces you to confront all the insecurities you were hiding from. Suddenly, he had to learn how to enjoy his own company again. He had to learn how to sleep without waiting for a message. He had to relearn who he was outside of someone else's attention. At first, healing felt unbearable. He missed her voice, missed the late-night conversations, missed the version of himself that felt wanted. But slowly, through pain, he started rebuilding his identity. He began focusing on the parts of his life he had neglected. He spent time with people who genuinely cared about him without making him beg for emotional crumbs. He started realizing how peaceful life feels when you're no longer constantly anxious about someone changing their feelings overnight. And over time, something powerful happened. He stopped needing constant reassurance to feel valuable. He stopped measuring his worth through someone else's affection. He understood that love is beautiful, but self-respect must always come first. Because the moment your entire emotional stability depends on another person, love stops being healthy and starts becoming emotional imprisonment. Years later, when he thought about her again, he no longer felt anger. He understood that not everyone who hurts you does it intentionally. Some people are simply emotionally unavailable. Some are fighting wounds they haven't healed from. But understanding someone's pain does not mean sacrificing yourself to save them. That lesson changed the way he loved forever. Now, when he enters relationship ties, he still loves deeply, but he no longer abandons himself in the process. He no longer begs for consistency, attention, or reassurance. He understands that the right person will never make love feel like a constant fight for emotional security. Because real love brings peace to your heart, not confusion to your mind. And the moment you stop chasing validation is the moment you finally stop losing yourself for people who were never willing to protect your heart the way you protected theirs. They looked perfect together from the outside, the kind of couple people secretly admired. Their pictures were full of smiles, long captions about loyalty, promises about forever, and comments from friends saying they were relationship goals. But nobody saw the silence after the photos were taken. Nobody saw the emotional distance growing between two people who loved each other but no longer knew how to communicate honestly. In the beginning, everything felt effortless. They talked for hours about their dreams, fears, childhood memories, and future plans. He felt safe with her. She felt understood by him. They believed that kind of connection would never fade. But relationships rarely break in one dramatic moment. Most of the time, they slowly weaken through unspoken emotions, hidden fears, and small acts of emotional avoidance that build over time. Whenever something hurt her, she would say, "I'm fine," even when she clearly wasn't. And whenever he felt emotionally neglected, he stayed quiet because he didn't want to seem weak or needy. They both loved each other, but both were terrified of vulnerability in different ways. She feared being misunderstood. He feared being rejected. So instead of honest conversations, they created emotional walls while pretending everything was okay. That's the strange thing about relationships. Two people can sleep next to each other every night and still feel emotionally alone. Over time, the small misunderstandings became heavier. He noticed her becoming emotionally distant but acted cold instead of asking what was wrong. She noticed him pulling away but responded with silence instead of honesty. Both were waiting for the other person to just understand without speaking openly. Pride replaced communication. Assumptions replaced truth. And slowly, love started drowning under the weight of emotional immaturity. One night, after another argument that started over something small but clearly carried deeper pain underneath, she finally broke down crying. Not angry crying, the kind of crying that comes from emotional exhaustion. She admitted she didn't know how to express her feelings anymore because every time she tried in past relationships, people either dismissed her emotions or used her vulnerability against her. And hearing that changed something inside him. For the first time, he stopped trying to win the argument and started trying to understand her pain. Then he admitted something too. He confessed how deeply afraid he was of not being enough. How every time she became distant, it triggered old wounds inside him that made him feel unwanted and replaceable. He had spent so much time trying to appear emotionally strong that he never realized true strength was honesty, not anger, not silence, not pretending not to care. That conversation lasted hours. No yelling, no manipulation, just two emotionally wounded people finally putting their guards down long enough to see each other clearly again. And strangely, that vulnerable moment brought them closer than all the romantic moments ever had, because real connection doesn't grow through perfection. It grows when two people stop hiding behind emotional masks. It grows when someone says, "I'm scared," instead of pretending to be cold. It grows when people stop treating vulnerability like weakness and start seeing it as trust. But even then, healing wasn't instant. They still had misunderstandings, still had emotional triggers, still carry insecurities from old heartbreaks. The difference was that they stopped fighting against each other and started fighting for the relationship together. He learned to listen without immediately becoming defensive. She learned to express her emotions before they turned into resentment. They both realized how much damage emotional games create in relationships. Ignoring texts to seem powerful, pretending not to care, testing each other's loyalty instead of communicating directly. Those things don't create attraction, they create emotional instability. And the truth is, most people are not heartless. Most are simply afraid. Afraid of abandonment, afraid of betrayal, afraid of giving their whole heart to someone who may eventually leave. So they protect themselves with distance, mixed signals, pride, and emotional walls. But the saddest part is that those same defenses often destroy the love they were trying to protect. As time passed, he started changing in ways that had nothing to do with her approval. He became calmer, more emotionally disciplined. He stopped reacting impulsively every time he felt insecure. Instead of demanding reassurance constantly, he learned how to reassure himself too. And she noticed it, not because he became emotionally unavailable, but because he finally became emotionally balanced. That balance changed the relationship completely. She no longer felt pressure to constantly prove her love every second. He no longer interpreted every quiet moment as rejection. There was peace where anxiety used to live. And for the first time, their relationship felt safe instead of emotionally chaotic. That's when he truly understood something powerful about love. People are most attractive when they are emotionally secure within themselves, not when they beg for attention. Not when they chase endlessly for validation, not when they lose their identity trying to be loved, because attachment without self-awareness creates suffering, but love combined with emotional maturity creates peace. And sometimes the strongest thing a person can do is stop playing emotional games long enough to finally say, "This is who I am, this is what I feel, and I'm no longer afraid to be honest about it."